listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the AwardsWatch Podcast, episode 153. I am your host, executive editor Rian McQuade, joined today by our editor-in-chief, still in Toronto, won't come home, Erik Anderson.
Oh, Canada. Yeah. Hi.
Sitting right next to him is Kevin Lee.
Hey.
And back home is Nicole Ackman.
Hello, everybody.
And back in New York, Dan Bayer.
Hello, hello.
What are we here to talk about today? We're here to talk about TIFF because that's what everybody has been except me. And evidently I was very missed, but I'm sad that I wasn't there. But I will be next year. Lord willing. But we're here to talk about this year's TIFF. There's some films that I have seen. There's a lot of films that you four have seen. This is Nicole's first year in person. Kevin's first year in person. He's covered it before virtually. Erik's done it 2 years, and Dan's done it 3. So Dan has seniority on this podcast outside of me today. Sorry, Erik. And so we're going to talk about the best films that they've saw, the worst maybe films that they saw. We're going to give out our predictions for the TIFF Audience Award because that has not been given out yet as of the time of recording. But by the time this releases, you'll all know what it is. So you'll see how stupid we are. All right. So, Nicole, how was your first TIFF? Let's start off with that.
It was great. TIFF is super fun. I'd never been to Canada before, and I absolutely fell in love with Toronto. It was very sad leaving it. I had a fantastic time. I saw so many movies. It was my first sort of like big festival that I'd ever done, other than the little festival that we have here in North Carolina. So it was exhausting and exhilarating. And I saw so many movies that I felt like I was losing my mind a little bit. Sometimes my last film of the day, I was like, this movie no longer feels like a movie.
Okay, Nicole.
But I had a really great time, and I was very lucky to have Erik as my roommate, guiding me through, and Dan, who literally walked me around all the theaters to be like, here's where things are. And our friend Jacob, who was also a fantastic roommate. So we had a really good time, and I got to meet so many people. Got to meet Kevin for the first time and Erik for the first time, and we hung out, and it was really nice to sort of not only get to see so many movies and see so much talent. I got to do a very fun interview, but also get to meet people that I've known on film Twitter for a long time, and get to spend some time just hanging out. That's
my favorite thing about any film festival is getting to meet you guys. I mean, and yes, taking care of Erik. It's like a gremlin, you feed him.
Erik was taking care of me.
I was really good this time.
Erik was in dad mode.
Here's the thing. You had all them there.
Erik
you had to take care of
charges.
them. Oh my God. Y'all don't even know.
It was amazing.
No, exactly. Kevin, your first, that's your first experience in person, right? Because you did virtually last year, right? So how was your first in-person experience in Toronto? Or how is it still going since you haven't come home yet?
Yeah, it's amazing. In this limited time that I've been here, I love Toronto. And I do have to thank Dan for helping me navigate and realizing, at least for this year, that finally the films are all nicely arranged in a 2-3 block radius, which is really nice to know and really convenient. And yeah, to basically add on what Nicole has already said, I think the most amazing thing during this fest is meeting everyone in person. It's just, it's really, really special because you get to see what they're like in person. You get to eat with them, drink with them. And also, I understand we all know each other on film Twitter and we talk movies all the time, but it's just not the same compared to going to the theater, seeing a film premiere, and then being able to talk about it immediately afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very, very special experience, and I love this. So I would absolutely do this again.
Yeah. And Erik and Dan, this is old hat for you at this point. You guys have, well, especially for Erik, very old hat. But Dan, you how many films have you seen? How many films did you guys, both of you, see? It's okay to say your number.
I think my final number was 32.
Okay. Erik?
I don't know what my body count is for the festival, but it's a lot less than 32.
Kevin?
I am currently at 21.
Okay. All right. And Nicole Ackman.
I am also at 21, but I do have 3 screeners I'm watching this weekend.
Okay, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it has not. The festival, just because we leave, is not necessarily over.
It's not over.
I'm at
It's
one.
never over.
I'm at one.
Yes, you saw The Woman King.
I did.
Yeah.
I saw The Woman King the same day everybody else did. So-
The only movie I haven't seen of all of this group.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
No.
That says a lot. Mm.
You shut up.
But you watched My Policeman, right?
I did.
Yeah. There you go.
Unfortunately.
Decisions
That was-
were made.
That was a fun audience experience, though. Let me tell you.
That's fair.
Decision to leave that movie unwatched, evidently.
Mm.
All right. Tons of movies. That's the other thing too about Toronto that's great is that you have a lot of the titles still from Telluride and Venice that come up. You have Cannes titles that carry over, but then you have all these world premieres, and so it's good to say we start talking about some of these. So yeah, you're right. It's the big movie this week, and there's a ton of movies that came out this weekend. Especially if like you're Dan in New York, you got to see Blonde, and there's that. So and
choices were made.
Listen,
There is that.
it's
I saw it twice.
you
You're a
shouldn't have
masochist.
tortured yourself.
Masochist, yeah.
doing that.
I had to. I watched it myself.
You wanted to feel like Marilyn in the movie, huh?
in like a press screening, and then I watched it last night here with Jacob. We had to like support animal each other.
Oh God.
I'm just gonna say this
Yeah.
up front, just get it out of the way. I did not like the movie at all. Darmus's performance is good, not great, in my opinion. I just think Andrew Dominic just overindulges himself to the point of losing any empathy whatsoever for Norma Jean, for Marilyn Monroe in the film. And I think also what the movie's very distracting in changing aspect ratios, going back and forth through black and white.
That's all the good stuff.
And call it no, it's disorienting and terrible, and it doesn't have a thematic purpose to it whatsoever. I don't want to hear anybody ever get mad at Christopher Nolan or Jordan Peele ever again for their IMAX cameras, because of the fact that like when they switch the aspect ratios all the time, like this movie's doing it from the box to the big to the this to the that. It's so much. I hated it. I hated the experience. I never say I hate things, but I really hated the experience because it's also 2 hours and 49 minutes long. And I think that's the big problem of it. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
Wow, does it drag?
God, it does. But there are some shots in it, though.
It's the most like viciously anti-abortion movie on a large scale that I think I have ever seen.
There are so many scenes. Erik, you and I talked about that offline, where we were just like, "This is weirdly Republican." In a weird way.
Who
Red
funded
state
this
bait.
movie?
Yeah,
Who
like, come on,
funded this?
Netflix. But there are a couple shots that shook me. There's one where it involves the somebody at hot sequence, and I swear to God, I thought it was Marilyn, the real Marilyn Monroe. I thought it was stock footage, and it was actually Anna de Armas. And I went,
Uncanny.
was like,
It's deep fake level.
Yeah.
good.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
terrifying.
Swear to God,
Yeah.
that's a clip you go, that's a makeup winner right there. That is a makeup winner, regardless of how I feel about the overall film. I was like, holy shit. And then there was like a couple scenes where they sort of juxtapose like Adrian Brody when he comes out of the cab when you first meet him into like a 1950s film. And there were style choices like that. I was like, man, that looked really good. And then the movie just didn't decide to do any of that anymore.
It's
Nick
the
and I
thing,
were
like-
talking last night that we want to see like instead of this, like a Baz Luhrmann's Marilyn movie.
Yes.
Would have been much
Because
more
then-
interesting.
And then at least then it would have been more thematically cohesive.
Yeah.
Like
And still have all the
this.
fun stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like this is just, it's just like, oh, this shot looks like this because I decided that's the shot aspect ratio that it would look best in.
Mm.
And it's very, very frustrating for that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
the Armas is great. Adrian Brody was surprisingly great.
I wanted more of him, but I know
Yeah,
that
me
the
too.
movie wouldn't allow that. I thought Bobby Cannavale was wasted, though. I thought it was like
Yeah.
terrible. One note, real one note.
And also, I just think it's interesting that out of all, like, Blonde, the novel is huge. It is like a tome. It's 700 pages long.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that of all the things that they could have cut, the biggest thing that they decided to cut is the whole Maryland death conspiracy thing. Like, oh, we'll throw all these other historical people under the bus, but not Bobby Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was the thing. The movie revels more at times, I think, in fact than it does supposed to be in fiction. Like, it feels like more of a Wikipedia thing, and then it's saying, oh, it's historical fiction. I'm like, you're blurring a line. So, but yeah, we don't need to talk about Blonde anymore. We can talk about The Woman King, so then we don't have to hear Erik talk, because you didn't see the movie. I'm sorry.
Like, that's gonna keep me from talking.
You shouldn't talk. Don't talk about things you don't see. Evidently, that's what people say on Twitter. Don't you know? So, Woman King. Who was at the premiere? Was anybody at the premiere here? Nobody was at the
Press
premiere?
screening.
Press screening. Okay.
Kevin and I saw it at the same screening.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw it when I got back to New York.
I saw it the same day as the world premiere. I was very lucky. And what a great movie. What a great
What a
movie.
film.
What a movie.
Truly.
What a movie that I'm just going to say this up front, listeners. Erik told you so. Because Erik told me that, oh, that movie is going to do nothing and not be that good. And
I'm sorry, what?
that's the truth. That is the truth.
I would like to remind everyone that back on a previous podcast, when we were talking about films that we were excited for this year,
Yes.
I talked about The Woman King, and
Yeah.
I was right.
Well, it's okay, Nicole. I talked about it like, what if it's like a sneaky Best Picture nominee? And Erik was like, oh, that's not going to happen. And so I don't know. It might still be a sneaky Best Picture nominee, given the fact that it's an A+ cinema
wish.
score today.
Yeah.
And people seem to hopefully be going to it. And it's got great critical buzz and audience scores out the yin yang that everybody loves. We could be talking about maybe a potential TIFF Audience Award contender here. Everybody, I assume, loved this movie like I did. Very
Yeah.
good. I know
Kevin and I are
Nicole
its biggest fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicole and I have just raved about this movie nonstop, which, like, it's a movie that I feel like in one universe of the multiverse, it would be winning like every Oscar that it gets nominated for, and that it would sweep like 10, you know. This brings me back to the old days when we had movies like Gladiator and Braveheart and Lawrence of Arabia and Lord of the Rings, where you watch the film and you literally see every technical department coming together. It's a film with amazing production design, costume, makeup, set pieces, and then on top of it all, it really had the patience and heart to tell this profound story that you have like this amazing takeaway from it. And then meanwhile, the cast is just, oh my gosh, the cast is going all in on this. This is, to me, this is like, we're talking SAG Ensemble here. Like, I was nominated for SAG Ensemble.
Please.
Yes, that was my immediate reaction upon seeing it. Like, I need this to be a SAG Ensemble nominee, because all of them, like, the combined charisma of this cast, it like burns a hole in the screen. It's insane. Viola Davis is just everything.
Lashana Lynch,
cannot take your eyes off her.
a movie star.
God,
Like a movie star. You know what I mean? So good. It production design, the costumes, just the overall look and aesthetic to it. It feels like such a, like Viola Davis was talking about when I saw some of the videos of her speech. This has been a project she's worked on for such a long time and wanting to get made. And I remember when I think she was doing press for Fences, when she was talking about doing something like this and wanting to do it for such a long time. And so it's nice to see that that this movie could break it, and it does. To all y'all's points, it does feel like a SAG ensemble, at least contender, because SAG has been more inclusive and diverse with their nominees over the last couple of years, and so I could totally see it playing in there. And I hope everybody goes and sees it this weekend, because I'm not trying to make a joke. It's a big epic film for movies like this that just don't get made, with this kind of diverse cast and love behind it too. So,
exactly. Like just scene to scene. Nicole and I were talking about this, how in every scene that we were watching, we kept having two thoughts in our minds. The first is they don't make movies like this anymore. And then the second is, this is nothing like I've ever seen before.
No,
I also just have to say, like, as someone who is literally in a class right now in grad school on the slave trade, it was wild because the reading I was doing this week for my class talked a lot about the Dahomey Kingdom and the Oyo Kingdom, and sort of the nuance of how do we sort of address culpability in the African people and their role in the slave trade. And the way that this film like hits every layer of nuance that my like graduate school reading did is kind of insane, without it ever feeling like it's going into sort of like moral preachy territory at all. And I just think that this screenplay is really beautifully crafted to give a lot of nuance, to give a lot of sort of different perspectives, to really help you understand all of the different elements that are in play. And then obviously like all of the cast are bringing it to life so beautifully. And I also just have to shout out, I think John Boyega is so good in this role, and it's so fun to get to see him play something like this. He's so like regal and commanding, and I hope that he gets like more roles like this in the future.
He's having a great post Star Wars run. I mean, he had Red, White, and Blue, if I'm not mistaken, which was the one part in the Steve McQueen documentaries, in the Small Axe anthology, and then of course Breaking, which is a film that was at
in theaters now.
In theaters now, with a quote on the top of the poster from someone, and then, which is a really great performance and very different than this. And so it's like he's working on the big level and the small level. But I mean, obviously, this is about all the women and this extraordinary cast, and a story that, just like I said, doesn't get told. We don't know. It's nice to see new stories like that. But it's Sony, right? Right, Erik?
Yes,
it's Sony.
It's Sony.
It's TriStar,
TriStar.
Okay. TriStar. So. And like, honestly, Gina Prince Bythewood, this is such a huge step up from the old guard in terms of the directing.
Well, I mean, that's not far. That's not too far.
How everything looks. The action is so much cleaner and more interesting, and she really got the dynamics between all the characters and the dynamic of the action down equally.
Exactly.
It's so well done.
It's the difference between working with a studio and I think a Netflix movie. I mean, Netflix action movies aren't the best looking action movies in the world. Let's just be fair. So, but anyway, we'll move on from that film. Hopefully it does really well at the box office, and it's one that we're going to continue to talk about. I think we will be continuing to talk about it, since we had a lot of crazy reactions. There were a lot of crazy reactions. There were a lot of things that were carried over from Venice. I want to get everybody's thoughts. Who's seen The Whale? Everybody here seen The Whale?
Okay. Yeah, we have all seen The Whale.
So who wants to go first with The Whale? Because then after that, we're going to talk about The Sun. So
The Whale, Kevin can attest to this because he was in the same screening with me and saw me afterwards. My whole body was racked with sobs. My eyes were red. I was shaking. The way that whole movie builds to the crescendo of the final 5 minutes is breathtaking. It is tremendous. Brendan Fraser is as good as you've heard, but everyone in the cast is fantastic. Hong Chow is such it is a really, really tricky part, and getting into why would be a spoiler, but she is phenomenal. Samantha Morton coming in for one scene to do what Samantha Morton does,
which
and
is steal the show.
Yeah, exactly. And Sadie Sink, I step up from Stranger Things, and
Erik,
I just like I love this movie. I love this movie with my whole being. It may be my new number one of the year. It's I hear some of the criticisms about it, and I think that the criticisms that I have heard say a lot more about the person watching the movie than it does about the choices the actual movie makes. Because if you pay attention to what the movie is doing and saying, Brendan Fraser's frat suit in this is like the planet in Melancholia. Like, it is a big extraterrestrial, like, avatar for depression and how it weighs you down. And I think that a lot of people are missing a lot of nuance that the movie is throwing in that.
What did I call it last night? Performative activism.
And
A lot of the things I'm seeing online.
Well, I mean, we experience
that are trying to sound like they're saying the right thing and feel the right thing.
I will say I am more mixed on the movie than the rest of you, I think. I do think, like, I guess I would just issue a little warning to anyone seeing it that I do think that the movie can be very triggering for anyone who has or has had an eating disorder. And I found some of it very difficult to watch. And I think sometimes it took it a step further than it needed to be, like, too soon in the movie. Because I think that, like, there's sort of a big scene that I understand why it culminates in that, but I do think that the way that he is filmed throughout some of it goes maybe a little bit too far in the earlier parts. That said, like, I think that it's full of gorgeous performances. Brendan Fraser really is just, like, transcendent. Like, it very much reminds me in many ways of Anthony Hopkins in The Father, in terms of it sort of being this mostly in one room, sort of him interacting with these other people from over the course of his life, sort of transformative in a way, but, like, mostly in that, like, you are sort of coming to understand his psyche throughout the course of the film. I think that he and Sadie have just beautiful sort of chemistry between the two of them. I think that the way that they play off of each other is really incredible, and I love her in this role. I think it's a really cool role for her, as she sort of steps into these more serious roles. I think that the whole cast is so special, and I'm not positive that I think it always, like, lands all of its themes. I think in particular, like, I wasn't positive that the sort of religious part of it completely comes together at the end. But that said, like, I think it's such an incredible piece, and I'm really looking forward to, like, watching it again, because I do think it's the kind of film that, like, on a second watch, I'm going to pick up even more nuance in it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that, Erik, going back to what Dan was saying real quick about the writer injecting themselves into these reviews and stuff, it seems like we're in the spiraling season of people putting their own thoughts ahead of time, or putting their own sort of narrative in there without actually reviewing the film. I mean, that sort of happened at Venice a lot with movies like Bardo, and maybe a couple others. I kind of felt that a little bit with The Sun as well, but I've also heard the criticisms about The Sun too, and so I'd be interested in that. But this one, it did feel like that. There were a lot of reviews that went, I didn't like the movie, but I loved Brendan Fraser. And so
there was one, like, weird comment in a Twitter thread that said it's clear there were no actually fat people a part of this production. And the ability to absolutely dismiss Brendan Fraser's own personal struggles the
Mhm.
last decade, to say that on top of the fact that there are elements of the Samuel Hunter, the writer's own story,
Yeah.
I don't know how you could say that. It's not even dismissive, it's just ill-informed and uninformed. It's there's absolutely plenty of room for discussion of the themes and how they work with weight and everything that this movie is, but it's like the wrong conversations are happening because they're not what it's about. And that's what's unfortunate, when the discourse isn't really properly focused.
I'm going to ask a question to Kevin because I'm curious about Kevin here. And I know Kevin's going to go like, really? You asked me this question? But it is curious because I know, Kevin, you're not the biggest person from our team of the awards inside it. But from the perspective of everyone that has seen the film, it feels like an undeniable performance, at least for a nomination. Some people even say like the race is already over for Best Actor. Do you think that as you know, someone less inclined to think of it through an awards lens?
Yeah, I think Brendan Fraser not only gives a phenomenal performance in this film, I think his performance in this, the amount of vulnerability and heart that he gives to this film, he gives as if this is the last thing he can ever do in his life.
Mm-hmm.
There's something extremely like real about his performance in the film, and it completely carries everything.
Okay.
It's all the hype about his performance is absolutely real. Like I sort of interpreted the character, because his character's name in the film is Charlie. I sort of stopped seeing the film as Charlie's story. I kind of started seeing it as Brendan Fraser's story. So in terms of awards, I do understand some people who are not the biggest fan of the film, and I get that. To me, from an awards point of view, this seems like one of those films that gets a nomination for picture, lead actor, screenplay, and maybe supporting actress, and then it wins lead actor and nothing else.
Yeah.
Makeup. Oh, makeup. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Makeup.
Yeah. It's totally the makeup winner at this point, like just from the first shot alone, because that's how makeup works nowadays in that category. You just release a photo and then you win. And actually, actually, I mean, I'm not wrong. I mean, you know,
You're not wrong.
But I really do implore people who have not yet seen the film to really go in with an open mind, because even though I do agree with what Nicole said earlier about how there's a lot of material in the film that could be triggering, but I think what made the film so effective for me, and why it's currently my favorite film from TIFF, is I was really taken aback by how empathetic Darren Aronofsky was with the film.
Mm-hmm.
It had I never really expected Aronofsky to sort of approach this subject matter from this empathetic point of view. Like, he is, even though some of the characters in the film can be really cruel, you feel like the film itself is being very kind and empathetic. And which brings me to one other thing that I love so much about the film that would not work in any other situation, I think, is the score. The score is full on melodramatic territory.
Oh my God.
If you heard it from if you heard it on its own, it sounds extremely melodramatic. And yet the way Aronofsky directs the film, like this contained setting based on a play, but the way he racks up the emotions, the vulnerability of these characters all the way to the last 5 minutes, what Dan said, it works. And then, and in the meantime, there are just images in this film. There are certain facial expressions that Brendan Fraser makes that are forever seared in my mind.
Oh yeah. There is one lightning reading he has in the middle of the movie that literally took my breath away.
It's going to be really fascinating. Obviously, you know, A24 having this film, it seems to be, for the most part, a big hit. especially for Brendan Fraser. And it goes back to the scenario I've said all year, where it's like, this movie's coming. I had a feeling that it would do pretty well. Now it's, will they be able to get both in, this and Everything Everywhere All at Once? Are they only going to be able to get certain nominations for maybe both? It'll be really fascinating to see how the race plays out for that. I mean, they also had The Inspection, which premiered as well. They've got in After Sun too. Yeah, and so they've got a lot on their plate to break into these acting categories, these picture categories. But I am curious about one film, because it was very divisive, Out of Venice. So it is interesting always seeing a second wave of reviews, and I want to kick it to Erik first, because I feel like this is his Spencer tweet this year, where it's, but on the opposite end, where I saw your reaction to The Sun, and I have to ask Erik, favorite movie of the year?
Yeah, I think it should actually be a midnight screening where we close up that movie. Pretty much every time Zen McGrath is on screen, you should.
Oh God!
Wow!
Like bottles of water or teardrops, because he doesn't have any when he cries. One of those like fake criers that just snivels, but there's no waterworks, and I hate this fucking movie so much.
Oh wow!
He really does. Having heard
passion.
him after seeing it, he really
I was
Wow.
like physically, violently angry when this ended. I was shocked. I mean, more than anything, obviously, and we've talked about this like every single day here, because it's consumed the conversation in the wild swing from the father to the son. I mean, they're the opposite styles of movies. The father is so beautifully contained. The POV is perfectly understood, and it's individual. The son is like, I hate saying it's like a TV movie, but I will say it's like a TV movie. And you get multiple perspectives, which gives the audience very little to actually hone in on. And it makes no one's perspective even remotely interesting, because everybody gets just this soft pedaled version of what's happening. It is the most generic version of depression, certainly of teenage depression, that I think I might have ever seen. So it's completely ineffective.
Well, can I ask you something? Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is where obviously we all have to separate the personal from what we think will happen in the awards race. Because I'm still seeing it after all these reactions getting predicted in places and by a lot of people. And so I'm curious, do you still see the world where we're going to have to be talking about this for the next 6 months?
Yes, of course.
And that it could break into major categories like actor and supporting actress.
Actor is a category that is getting weaker by the day.
Yep.
So when you already had Jackman penciled in as a top 3 contender, even with the reviews and the response,
he's gotten mostly good responses.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah, he's not the problem of the film. Hopkins has gotten good ones. Dern.
Okay.
I've seen good stuff for Dern. Mostly Kirby though.
Kirby's the only one that comes out unscathed.
Well, yes. Remember when we thought maybe
Dern should get her Oscar taken away.
Erik, remember when we thought Zane McGrath could be like Timothy Hutton for a hot minute? Yeah, that was a fun 20 minutes. But I think does everybody else kind of agree, or did somebody like it here, or were everybody kind of lukewarm on it?
I didn't see it.
Me
I
neither.
chose to go see Raymond and Ray instead, and that was a really good decision.
Okay. All right.
Raymond and Ray is delightful.
That's the Ethan Hawke, Ewan McGregor film, correct?
Yes.
Were they like stepbrothers or
Yes.
They're
brothers?
half brothers.
Half brothers.
Half brothers.
Okay, half brothers. Okay.
Rodrigo Garcia's best movie to date, easily.
Okay.
Deals with family trauma in a really interesting, funny, nuanced way.
Deals with it.
Which is-
Deals with it a heck of a lot better than The Son.
I was going to say it's everything the sun apparently.
Apparently, yeah.
Okay. All
We
right.
need that hard cut of Jamie Lee Curtis saying trauma 35 times.
Trauma.
Oh, God.
Trauma.
Although, like, I will say that, like, knowing the play The Sun, but not having seen the movie, this was always sort of my fear of the reactions to it, because whereas the father is really playing this structural game and it traps you into that perspective so creatively, the son is really more of a straightforward melodrama.
Mm.
And there's not a whole lot you can really do stylistically to sort of elevate it like you have to for the father.
Yeah.
So that was always my fear with this movie, was that people were going to go, well, this is just so standard, like TV movie, Lifetime movie sort of thing. And it's been interesting to see the reactions and how it's really been kind of split. I think after Toronto split more towards this is a piece of trash, but still kind of the people who love it,
Man,
really love it.
and you only need a certain amount to get into that best picture. And Sony
Well,
Pictures
that's what's
Classic.
fascinating
was
too,
great.
when you have a movie playing an international festival on one side of the world and then again on another, because sometimes you will get extremely changed and diverse opinions, and then it's kind of fun, if something's like really loved at Venice and then it gets here to Telluride or Toronto, and then people are like, what are you talking
What
about?
movie is this? Yeah.
And a lot of times that is because their thoughts are already sort of tainted by everybody else's that came before them.
Mhm.
So really what happens a lot, and what happens in reviews sometimes too, is that you're responding to the previous response
Yeah.
a little more than your actual own opinion. And I have to be guilty of that too.
Well, we tried to make sure
I have
that
my own
didn't
biases.
we tried to make sure that didn't happen for certain films that were like Bardo, for example. When I was writing, I was trying to make sure, because you were like, don't respond to the Venice people. You know what I mean? It was,
as much as possible.
Yeah.
When we can do that, I think we're better off.
yeah, no, I agree, because then you're making it about the movie and not about subject matter outside of the movie. Don't worry, darling. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So there
Save
you
that
go.
stuff for culture pieces and prediction pieces and stuff like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. For other sort of context. All right. I'm going to step away from The Sun. I'm going to get to some world premieres here. So let's talk about Bros. Which made it, I think, Bros. What's up, bro?
Bros. Line for line, the funniest movie of the year.
Is Dan, are you the only one that's seen Bros?
Eric has.
Erik? Eric. Oh, well, you said you were going to see it again
tonight.
Oh, you're seeing it again tonight. Okay,
He's taking the boys.
He's taking the boys. It's boys' night out.
I'm showing the boys how it is.
It's a history lesson for everyone.
And then we'll come back to the hotel after.
No.
And then you'll explain
it.
to them what poppers is, and then you'll come back to the hotel room and have them try some.
And here they are.
This is how it goes.
Who does not bring VCR cleaner with them when they travel?
I mean, really,
like a wine tasting. Anyway, I've just heard nothing but great things. Obviously, the movie sort of walked into a little bit of a controversy, but not too much of a controversy by, Billy Eichner and all those comments and stuff, and Joe Kim Brewster and all that stuff. But beside the point, the movie I heard is absolutely fantastic. One of the best comedies of the year. Not surprising. Nick Stoller, really good at directing comedies. Obviously, Billy Eichner.
Pretty good for a straight guy.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Pretty good.
But I think also too, based off it, if the Golden Globes exist, maybe it's a comedy play there. Maybe screenplay, depending on how funny it is. But just Dan, from your perspective, were you there at the opening night, or were you press screening, or?
I was there for the premiere. Yeah,
you were there for the premiere. I heard it was just a fun time there with everybody.
It really was, and it's one of those things where like seemingly every other line in the screenplay is a laugh line, and like you missed so many because we were all laughing.
Mm.
It is really, really funny.
Yeah.
I this movie attacked me as a 38-year-old gay man, cis white gay man. And I thanked Billy Eichner and asked for more. It's
Fair.
it's that good. And I was genuinely shocked by how just good of a movie it is.
Mm.
Like there are
It's a movie.
it's a real movie, and like the screenplay is really good. There is something, with these kinds of movies that are like, the first major studio adult focused rom-com for gays. Like, we talk a lot about the burden of representation and just having to be everything to everyone because of all this, studio stuff and how you want it to be perceived online. You don't want this backlash. It meets that burden so easily that it's kind of ridiculous. And I was so impressed. The filmmaking is no slouch either. It is very well edited, very well shot, and the performances in it are all a ton of fun. I had a great time. I can't wait to go back and see it when it opens with a group of friends and just laugh our asses off at it. And yeah, I had heard rumblings beforehand of it being a potential like dark horse original screenplay contender, and I kind of laughed at that. And now that I've seen it, I'm like, well,
Maybe it is.
actually, it's funny enough. If it does the box office that like a Bridesmaids did, I could definitely
You
see
can see
it
that
happening.
Yeah, because I mean, there is sort of like a little bit of a barren wasteland on the schedule, on the release schedule and everything, and it could play well and could play big. I'm gonna move around some films so we can get as many things because we're running long, but I want to get as many things. So I want to kick it to Kevin because I want to get his thoughts because I know he wrote the review. He absolutely loved this film, The Menu, which debuted at Toronto. With Ray Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicholas Hoult. It's a film I literally see next weekend at Fantastic Fest in Austin. I'm dying to see it. So Kevin, give your thoughts on it real quick.
I adore The Menu. It is a film that knows exactly what it is. It has its twists and turns without incorporating some dumb twist that completely changes what the film is about. It's self-contained, it's hysterical. But I think what really made it so great to me was how, even though the film is clearly about food and being at this restaurant, this quality exclusive restaurant, I think the film makes a really profound statement about art. It's making this really interesting commentary about artists and their passion to give. And then exploring what happens when that collides with our culture of consumers who do nothing but take and take and take. And then it adds on top of that with our tendency to use really pretentious rhetoric to describe how good something is or how bad something is, and how that affects the entire ecosystem of the people who give and the people who take. And so as the film goes on, which by the way, it's so funny for nonstop from start to finish. But as the film goes on, you really start to see like the meta commentary that's really going on, that the film is talking about film. It's talking about art. It's talking about anything that's artistic that we as people come to appreciate and then sort of lose our appreciation of it because it sort of becomes like its own weird like industry of rhetoric, and so at the end of the day, it's like a tale of reclaiming that passion. And then in the meantime, the performances are all terrific. The script is so sharp, it breezes right by in its runtime, and it all comes together in this ending that I found to be extremely satisfying. It's a film that maybe if I were to sit down and really analyze the script, maybe there are issues here and there. Maybe it's not the best paced film or something like that. But frankly, it's a film that I really don't care about the issues. It's kind of like your personal favorite movie that you have seen the most number of times, where you just don't care. You don't care about the problems. You're just gonna, it just pushes all the right pleasure buttons for you that you're just gonna watch it over and over again. And that's exactly what The Menu was for me.
Okay, awesome. Can't wait to see it next week. Nicole, I'm gonna kick it over to you. I know that you did a couple of reviews for us, but Emily's the one, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken, is the one that you really cling to as your favorite. So if you could just give us a little bit of that, talk a little bit about that film and why you love it so much.
And I'm gonna cheat a little bit and talk about two films, if that's okay, because I think they go together really well.
That's fine.
I think I know what the other one is.
Yeah. So obviously, everyone who knows me knows I'm a period drama girly, and TIFF gave me some really great things this year. But there are two films that are sort of centered around women in blue dresses. And that is Emily and the Wonder, both of which have astounding lead performances.
More I thought about the Wonder.
Yeah. I have loved Wuthering Heights since I was like 16 and read it for the first time and got obsessed with it. It is why I love like gothic romance, gothic horror. Like you can trace my love for my like favorite film Crimson Peak to my love of Wuthering Heights. And Emily is really astounding in how it sort of blends some of the like atmosphere of like a Wuthering Heights, but with the true story of the Brontes. It is astoundingly like good in terms of period accuracy, in terms of like hair, costuming, makeup, as is The Wonder, which I was thrilled to see. I love like good Victorian costuming. And I was just astounded by how like Emily dealt with things. It has like the sexiest sex scene I've seen in a while. It's really hot. And it also just deals with, sort of ideas around creative people and fitting in and giving up who you are or not, and family trauma in really interesting ways, and religion, which is another sort of connecting through line between that and The Wonder. The Wonder is astounding.
It's getting better in my head the more I've thought about it since Telluride.
Lawrence is so good in it, and the way that it deals with sort of ideas around religion and what religion drives people to, and what the ways in which people abuse religion to abuse other people, I think is really interesting. And the whole idea of miracles. And I also just think, again, it's one where like the relationships are so interesting. There's a lot of weird connecting lines between them. They both also have like opium scenes, which are filmed in really cool ways.
Sounds cool. Yeah.
I really like both of those. Just absolutely blew me away. I can't wait to watch both of them again. Emma Mackey is astounding in Emily.
So good.
Miss Flo once again proving why she's one of the greatest actresses of her generation.
It is the better performance for her this year. It really is.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. And I think it's very fun to sort of see her back in a period drama again. And they're both movies that I'm like very much looking forward to seeing again, because I think they are also the kind of things that will like improve with more watches. I just want to get my hands on Emily immediately.
Yeah. Erik, speaking of period films with sex scenes in them, I want to get your thoughts on My Policeman, your most anticipated film of the year.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
What'd you think?
There's actually a lot of sex in My Policeman. A lot. It's mostly like cowgirl, reverse cowgirl kind of stuff, like
all the positions.
Harry Styles is sitting on a couch or a bed, and David Dawson is just kind of hopping up and down, like a little cowgirl. But
good for her.
There's a lot of other things too. There's and I think for a very brief moment they switch, and then David Dawson gets on top and puts it in just a little bit, and just the tip.
You know what I mean?
Here's the thing about My Policeman is that it does not have any interest or ability in going outside the boundaries and the color lines of anything that we have seen of a 1950s closeted case story before at all. All of the hallmarks are there in the most kind of generic of ways.
Hallmark.
Emma Corrin's very good. David Dawson is very good. Harry Styles is fine. He's serviceable, but he's just kind of, he's not bad at.
Well, he is serving. He's serving.
He's not very good at yelling. When he gets mad,
Oh yeah.
it's a little funny.
When I'm supposed to get angry, you know
my
what I mean?
audience laughed so many times during this movie, and a lot of it was because they make too many remarks about that Styles' policeman character is like an ordinary person and average looking. Like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And so people were just laughing.
Maybe the roles should have been reversed.
It's a little silly. No, speaking
Or-
of roles reversed, because there's a
here we
whole
go.
cast that plays the trio.
Yeah. The
Oh
older
my God, we
like,
talked. Yeah,
65 or 70. Gina McKee
Gina McKee.
is wonderful. She plays the Emma
Mhm.
Corrin older. But Rupert Everett and Linus Roach play the older versions of
the
David
wrong.
Dawson and Harry Styles, but they should have been switched. It makes
Yes. Okay.
no
Yes.
sense.
I was so confused every time as to who was who.
It reminded
And
me.
that's exactly
yeah.
what.
Rupert
It-
Everett and Harry Styles have the same kind of long face, big hair.
Yeah.
You could absolutely see them as being older version, younger version of themselves.
Yeah.
And then Linus Roach and David Dawson have this sort of like, apple shaped.
Mhm.
I'm my mind, it was just constantly having to readjust that they were playing the other person, and it was so annoying and frustrating, and it just is an unforced error. But
It reminded me of, like, when you said that online. It reminded me of the 2011 film The Debt. With,
yeah, they
Oh,
said the
yes.
same thing.
where
under-
that thing does the same thing with like Tom Wilkinson and
Yeah.
Kieran Hines at the end, and I'm
Mm.
going, wait, who are they supposed to play? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why is Tom Wilkinson playing the international one and then the other one? And it's such a weird pairing, and it doesn't make any
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
It almost feels like they don't know what they're doing on set.
Yeah.
So
But I mean,
good job,
ultimately,
Amazon.
Ultimately, the movie suffers from the worst thing a movie can be, and that's just boring.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not bad, and it's not good. It's just there.
Okay. Well, I got 3 more things I want to talk about, and then we're going to get into our round table. And these are the 3 big things. One of is which Erik and I have seen, but I'm curious to hear what everybody else's thoughts are, which is Sarah Pauli's Women Talking, which got another wonderful praise across the board, standing ovations, and that cast was there, minus Francis, and just seemed once again to just be an undeniable film in this awards race. So I'll start with Nicole, and then I'll go to Dan, and then Kevin. Women Talking. Is it as real deal as Erik and I thought it was at a Telluride for you?
I just have to say, similar to in the movie, the cast was there except for Francis.
Yeah.
No, I was not sure what I was going to think about this film going in. It's obviously very difficult subject matter, and I was so blown away by it. I think that I feel like I've said nuance so many times in this podcast already that, like, you could play a drinking game with it, but the nuanced way in which it discusses sort of the themes around, sexual assault and the patriarchy and toxic masculinity, even sort of it hints at, is really astounding. The way that it sort of uses this very exaggerated situation to have bigger discussions about, like, the world that we all live in, particularly in sort of discussing, like, at what age are men sort of too old to walk back from the behavior that they've been taught. At what point, do you have to sort of throw out the whole thing? What is, for women who are sick of living in a world where these things happen, what is the solution? And I think that the way that it sort of all unfolds and how well they're able to both make the parts of it that literally are women sitting in a room talking so engaging that I was on the edge of my seat, while also expanding and giving us enough of the world around them to understand sort of, you know, the outside influences and the context that this conversation is taking place in. I think the performances are incredible. I was very blown away by Claire Foy. I know a lot of people have talked about Jessie Buckley, and I think that she's great, but it's the kind of performance that, like, I knew Jessie Buckley could give this performance.
Yeah.
And I think this is something quite different from what we've seen from Claire Foy a lot of the time. I think that Ben Whishaw is amazing in it. I think that his whole plot line is really fascinating. And I think, like, the way that they sort of use that to examine sort of where men fit into this conversation is really smart. And I just was so astounded by the whole thing. I will say my one gripe with it, I don't really think the color grading works entirely.
I was going to ask all y'all's
That's
opinion
my
on
one
that.
thing.
And
Yeah.
mostly because I wanted there to be a starker contrast between whenever we see these sort of like flashbacky bits. I
Mhm.
wanted those to feel much colder than the sections that are just women.
Mhm.
But I'm also like, because I understand the world that she's trying to create, which is this world, like, you know, without technology, without whatever, and she's trying to make it feel quite different. I kind of like, I understand why that occurred, so I don't entirely hold it. It's not one of those creative choices where you're like, well, where did that come from? Like,
Yeah.
I understand it just didn't work. But that really is like my only gripe with the movie, I think. And I think that it does a very good job of sort of being long enough to have all the conversations that it needs to have without sort of driving them into the ground too far. It's not like too long. I felt like it ended right when I needed it to. I will also say quickly, and I know Kevin did this as well, I would not recommend The Woman King and Women Talking as a double feature. It was essentially like sexual assault, the double feature, which I would not recommend because I was emotionally exhausted afterwards. Although I think that would happen no matter when you watch this movie. Like, it definitely is something that you have to spend time processing afterwards. But I think it's also very much worth having to spend that time processing.
I would also say don't watch Bardo after this. Because like Eric and I did, because it's just like you need
If
need
you
time
can watch
to,
this movie like and nothing else on either side of it, that's what I would recommend.
I agree, because I think that it's a movie you have to process a lot of it, and you're taking it out, and it makes you have to think, and it moves you to a place that not many other films get to this year. Kevin, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I also thought the film is really, really terrific. I think overall it is a writing achievement, because I think pretty much what Nicole said, I think there's so many lines and conversations in this film that are extremely nuanced and gray. They're like, and I mentioned it in my tweet that the film actually reminds me a lot of Mass last year, in that it is really a film about characters taking place after a traumatic event. And it's a film about these characters meeting up in a single location. And when they talk, they're not just debating at each other, they're really processing their emotions out loud. And I think it's important. It's an important film because the characters are talking about things that I think a lot of people maybe are not, I don't know if it's not ready to have, but it's still like necessary and essential to hear and to listen to. And I agree with what Nicole said, that I think Claire Foy is the best supporting actress in that cast. Ben Whishaw is also just incredible.
Yeah.
To add on to what Nicole said about her gripe, the thing that holds the film back from being a masterpiece or being a fantastic film to me is I think it's not the best on a filmmaking level. I think the editing is fantastic. The score is fantastic, but I'm not the biggest fan of how it's shot. I'm also not the biggest fan of how the actors are blocked in that location. I think it could have been better. And the color grading was consistently distracting for me from start to finish, that I noticed myself actually unable to feel like I truly have access to these characters. And I feel like had they went a slightly different aesthetic approach, I think I would have loved it so much more. And so but I don't want to sound like I'm hating the movie, because I'm really not.
How dare you, Kevin? No, I'm
you know, because like I said, it's a film completely carried by Sarah Pauli's writing. And so from that alone and the performances, you should go see it. Everyone should go see it.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, Erik and I have sort of talked about it. This does feel, based off of its reactions out of TIFF and out of Telluride, this is a big major contender. This is one of our top contenders that we'll talk about probably throughout the year. Obviously, I think the writing, like Kevin said, it'll get in. It's curious about these acting performances. This ensemble, talk about SAG ensemble, is definitely a contender for that. I know you kind of agree with Nicole and Kevin on the aesthetic and everything. So I kind of want to get away from that and sort of talk a little bit about where you see potentially who should be running in what category. I mean, there's been a little bit of talk about Rudy maybe in lead, running them all in supporting. Obviously, Ben Whishaw probably most likely the one to get in, the easiest in supporting actor. But for me, I know you all mentioned Claire Foy and Jessie Buckley, but Rooney and the other ladies as well, including the child performances, right? And so to much to that degree, I think that still plays for Sarah Polley as a director nominee as well too. If I'm not if you agree, Dan.
Yeah, everyone in this movie is fantastic. Everyone is giving a great performance, and I think that it may end up hurting some of them because they're all supporting. There is not a lead. They are all supporting. I do agree. I think this is Rooney Mara's best performance. I thought Jessie Buckley was fantastic. Judith Ivey was great. Ben Whishaw, I am not a big Ben Whishaw fan. I'm so sorry to Josh Parham.
You're gonna hurt Josh.
I
Josh
know.
just got them fighting words.
So sorry. I think that he's giving a very Ben Whishaw performance here, and I would like to see that honored. It is for me. Claire Foy totally stole the show. Walked away with it. Absolutely.
Okay.
I liked Frances McDormand's cameo.
You mean producer? She basically was just like, I'm gonna go to craft services. I'll see you guys later.
She was on set one day and her producer capability, and she was like, wait a second.
Wait a minute. I could be in this.
Yeah. Truly.
I optioned this book. You know what I mean?
I think this really is a writing achievement. I think it is far and away the front runner for adapted screenplay. And I think it is because of what Nicole was talking about. This conversation is so nuanced, and they really look at it from all angles, this sort of impossible situation that they have of after all of these horrible assaults that they have all been a part of, trying to reconcile that with their faith and saying, do we stay or do we leave? It's an impossible situation, and the way they talk about it and how they ultimately arrive at decision and why, I thought was incredibly fascinating, and all the performers pull it off so well. And I think that, adapted screenplay frontrunner, it should be in the running for all the acting categories. That score,
Hildor.
For me, the score kind of saved the movie from the cinematography. I thought that the cinematography, I get the impulse to reclaim the Clint Eastwood color filter, but it really did put me at a distance from the story, because it made it feel like it was taking place so far in the past, and they specifically in the film reference that it's taking place in 2010.
Yeah,
it's not all that long ago, and yet you're shooting it like it is, almost sepia toned.
Yeah,
and I think that would help making the color filter brighter, or the heightening the saturation would make it feel more immediate. But that score is so modern sounding and so effective that it did that sort of push pull that did kind of pull it back into the present day for me. And I thought that was really, really strong work from Hildur there. I don't think that it is the front runner for Best Picture that a lot of people were assuming and hoping for, but I think it's pretty easily going to be top 5.
No, Dan, I think it will be in the top 5 for sure. I still see its path, and I know that the cinematography is a lot to carry for so many people, and in terms of complaints, but I really can see that being like the random nomination on the morning. Like everybody's like, wait, that got in there. You know what I mean? Like that happens every single year.
Yeah.
But this is the big one, along with another one that we'll talk to wrap everything up, about Steven Spielberg coming to Toronto, and releasing this big juggernaut in the awards conversation. So Kevin, I'll kick it over to you first. This is a film that Kevin Lee told me, Rian, I can't wait for you to see The Fabelmans. I'm curious as of why you would think of me, Kevin, other than you think of me all that you guys thought of me a lot, but what was the reason why you think I'll like The Fabelmans?
Well, because looking at some of your personal favorite films of every year, like you loving Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you loving Licorice Pizza, and you being one of the earliest supporters of Belfast, and also championing a film like Pig for seeing the meta side of it, and how the film is more than what it appears to be on the surface. I think The Fabelmans is something that I think there are so many layers in this film that I think you would absolutely appreciate. I'm just going to come out on this podcast and say that I was never interested to see The Fabelmans, because this whole idea of Spielberg making a film about his childhood, it was one of those films where I just thought to myself, I'm sure I'll like it, but am I excited to see it? I am not. I am also one of those people who, despite enjoying every Spielberg film in the 2010s era, I never felt like he has made something that has come close to what he's done in the late 90s and the early 2000s, that sense of sincerity and purity and innocence to it. And so, color me surprised to say that The Fabelmans is not only one of my favorite films of the year, I think it is easily the front runner for Best Picture right now. It runs at 2.5 hours, and believe me when I tell you that I could have sat for another hour for that film. It is a movie that is beyond just him when he was younger discovering a passion for filmmaking. It's funny how a film that's so specific about Spielberg's life actually is so universal in what it's exploring. It is a coming of age story. It is a story about a child trying to deal with his parents separating. It's about how you take that trauma and difficulty and how to transform that into art, because that's the best way you can express yourself, and how art and life is like this constant vicious cycle that you will always have to deal with in your life. And it will come back to you in different stages of your life too. It will hit you once when you're a child. It'll hit you again when you're in high school. It'll hit you again when you try to find your first job. And I felt like Spielberg just wears his heart and sincerity just on his sleeve the entire time. The cast here, they all give incredible performances, but it is really the script that lets every character have this chance to be understood. There's a rare vulnerability to every character where I felt where everyone was coming from. And as a result, I think this is like this might be my favorite Paul Dano performance. It's not my favorite Michelle Williams performance, but right now from where I'm sitting, she's the front runner to win supporting actress. Okay. And I would be totally okay if this carries home like screenplay, director, picture, all that. It is better than everything that I expected and hoped out of the film. It's probably the best thing that Spielberg's made in the past 15 years. And that's coming from me, who was never excited to see this film in the first place.
All right. Erik, Erik, welcome back. What do you think of The Fabelmans?
I liked it a lot. I'm very glad that I've had it in Best Picture and Best Director since like May. I feel even stronger about it now. You know, a lot can happen. It's a big studio picture, and lots of directors are really obsessing over their childhoods and semi-autobiographical stories. It's becoming like the theme of the last couple of years. And you never know exactly how it's going to be met. Belfast did okay, and you know, won original screenplay over a lot more deserving things. But I think Spielberg really exists in a class and in a place all by himself in this industry. And not that it's like some type of return to form, but I think he always does father-son stories. He always does family stories. He's just really kind of into that. And I think this is his most vulnerable. I know people say most personal, but I think it's his most vulnerable too. His willingness to show his mother as really unhinged as she is in this. And yes, Michelle Williams was already winning before this. She is untouchable here. There is no, you know, little performance in Women Talking or other supporting performance that is going to be able to hold a candle to the volume 11 acting that she does in this. It's a lot. It's Zellweger and Cold Mountain, but like even more.
Too much.
It is too much, but it's the kind of thing that voters will absolutely.
Oh yeah, they're gonna eat it up. Yeah.
And I think critics will too. I think that she'll get plenty of attention there.
Yeah.
It actually has a child performance that is good and passable and effective, and he's the lead, so he needs to be. There are plenty of very too much winking at itself bits in the screenplay. Like, I may make a movie out of this someday. But again, people give passes to Spielberg that they would not give to other filmmakers. But I did like it a lot. I didn't love it, but I really liked it a lot. It's warm and vulnerable and beautifully shot, beautifully scored. Great cameo at the end. I think we all know what it is. But
best part of the movie.
It's a great cameo. And I think very few people, again, could get away with the last shot that this movie has. Very few people could get away with it.
It's so cheesy.
It's cheesy as hell. But I mean, that's Spielberg.
Yeah.
So good.
So, Nicole, you seen it? Did you? No, you didn't get to see it.
I didn't see it. I sacrificed it to see some other stuff because I know that like I will get to see it on a big screen eventually. I will say though, I have been sort of in a similar boat to Kevin before seeing it, where like I wasn't really that excited for it. I like Spielberg, but stuff like he is a little bit hit or miss for me. And Kevin's thoughts on it have actually made me very excited for it. So
thank you.
All right. And Dan, I know you. Dan, I know of all of us here that have seen it. You were the most mixed on it. And so I'm curious as to why it didn't work for you as much as everybody else.
It's just one of those things where I think the reactions are kind of overblown. You know, I don't think it's a masterpiece. I don't think it's great. It's very good. It is very good. But people are, I think, if this movie was made by Ryan McQuade, I don't think it would be getting the amount of raves that it is getting right now. And this is no shade to you, Ryan. It's just a more of, I think people are, you know, coming all over themselves for it because it's Spielberg.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think, again, like, I think it's good. The lead kid is really, really good. But the performances as a whole, like, they're all over the map. They don't feel unified in any way. Michelle Williams is at like a 15. Judd Hirsch is at a 10. Paul Dano is at a 2. Seth Rogen is trying to unite them all, and God bless him. God bless him for trying. Bless him for trying. I think that the movie in the middle, my biggest problem with it is that the screenplay, it just felt very shaggy and unfocused to me. It sort of goes off on a couple of tangents that lasted a little longer than I think would have been best. I don't think this movie needed.
You mean like the girl that's trying to convert him to Catholicism?
Oh my God, that was hilarious.
So good.
I
Super
loved
hilarious.
it. But I just think a lot of the stuff, a lot of the high school scenes just went on for too long.
Okay.
And it sort of took away from the family drama that seemed to be the real heart of the movie. And again, not that it's bad, it's good, but it's not great. And I think that it is kind of, grading on a curve, A, because it's Spielberg, and B, because, like Kevin said, it is the best thing that he's done in quite a long time.
Okay.
Probably the best thing he's done since The Post.
Okay.
And
Like,
depending on how your mileage goes with The Post. Yeah.
On the poster, Dan Bayer better than the BFG.
See-
There you go.
Ryan, the stuff what Dan just said about the script, that actually leads me to another reason why I think why I thought of you, Ryan, why I think you would love it, because you love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and you love Licorice Pizza.
I do.
And as much as I like those two movies as well, you know that I don't love those two movies as much as you do, because my general issue with those two is I feel like those two movies meander too much, and that they sort of feel like they're making themselves up as they go along. But you talked about how that's why you love it so much, because it's also like a portrait of a time and place.
Yeah.
But you happen to be following these characters. So even though it's a drama, it feels like an epic drama.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
That is exactly
why
the Fabelmans worked so well for me, because I understand where Dan's coming from. There's a lot of scenes where a voice in my head was going, why are we watching this? Like, what is the scene? What is the scene doing for the overall film? But the film just keeps going in certain directions that I never expected it would. And it kept giving me things that I never thought it would give. Like, whoa, I didn't expect to get some of this, but like, great, like keep giving it to me, Yeah. And so if it's a film that plays 2.5 hours long, but it plays like this epic drama that spans decades, sort of,
Yeah.
And as much as it is intimate and vulnerable and specifically about this family, about Spielberg's childhood, I think it is so universal that any audience member can take something very, precious out of it.
Yeah.
And then add on to Spielberg finally adding that childlike innocence and purity that we haven't really gotten since E.T. That's what I would say. This is one of those films where before it came out, people said, oh, this is an obvious pick for Best Picture. And I'm like, yeah, of course it's an obvious pick. And then there I was after the film was over thinking, okay, but it's actually that good.
Okay. All right.
Well, it kind of does what you and I were talking about earlier, where a movie can have a very universal appeal, but if it doesn't have a specific protagonist and point of view, and it just gets lost in a sea of generics. And this is very specific. I think the best scenes are when the teenage Spielberg / Fabelman is recreating all of his home video stuff. Because all of those videos are available to watch of Spielberg's actual movies that he made. And not only are they like dead on recreations, this is the thing you want to see about a growing up Spielberg. You want to see his origins of being a filmmaker, of his ability to understand practical effects and all of the influences he would take from that and move to later when he became a filmmaker. That was the best part for me by a country mile.
Yes.
You watch those scenes and it's joy on screen.
Okay.
They're incredible. They're beautifully staged.
Well, it sounds like Universal has a Universal picture on their hands. That's what
Yes, they do.
you guys are saying. So looking forward to it. Obviously, it just announced that it'll be the closing night film at the AFI Film Festival. And I'm looking
That
forward.
makes sense.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Last film, and it's another big one that I cannot wait to see. And I know that everyone here has seen this film, and that is Rian Johnson's latest film, Glass Onion: A Knives Out mystery. It is what some people are now considering to be Netflix's biggest play, or its most successful play maybe of this year. I don't know how that would go, but Erik, I'm going to go right back over to you, and I want to know about the onion and the glass of it all. And I want to know how good this movie is, because I have heard from a lot of people that they think it's just as good, if not better than the first. So I'm curious, because you were at the premiere, if I'm not mistaken, right, Erik?
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah. Well, the opening title is only Glass Onion, so the Knives Out mystery is not even a part of it.
Take it away. Just take it away.
Very clearly trying to get away from the Knives Out element of it, which is the right thing to do.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It is so much fun and so funny and neat. That's a movie that needs multiple rewatches, not just to really kind of absorb the mystery and breadcrumb your way to the finale, but because there are just jokes and visual gags every minute. It's and it is nothing like you would expect. What you think you know about Glass Onion, which I know is very little for some people, is absolutely wrong, which is perfect. There have been exactly the right amounts of, distracting clues and, just everything. I think Janelle Monáe is fucking extraordinary in this. Kate Hudson, I think this is the funniest thing she has ever done. The beginning,
so much fun.
It takes place during the pandemic, so there are a lot of pandemic related content at the beginning, but by far the funniest is when Kate Hudson shows up in a mesh mask like Lana Del Rey at that book signing. I ascended to the heavens. She absolutely as funny as her mother at her height. She destroyed this role in the best way. And yeah, it's a juicy mystery. It's a funny mystery, totally unexpected. And everyone's performance is very unexpected from what you think you know about them. Yeah.
And yet they're still perfectly cast.
Yeah, really well cast.
Yeah. Nicole, I know that did you see this one? You saw this one too, right? Everybody's seen this one, right?
I saw it the morning after the premiere, and I got the cast Q&A, and I got a very, very hungover Daniel Craig in the Q&A.
Okay, that's good.
Well, he literally could not form sentences.
Well, she drank Erik under the table.
Yeah. Well, we were at the premiere and then the after party, and that cast was drunk
in a great way. They were celebrating. They were having a good time. But Nicole, speaking of Daniel Craig, Erik didn't mention it, but how was Mr. Benoit Blanc himself?
Oh my gosh, he's so great. I really, really love what they're sort of doing with this Knives Out universe now, in that and Rian Johnson, who I adore, talked about this in the Q&A after, which is basically that he wants to sort of make not sequels to Knives Out, but like a continuation of the Benoit Blanc universe in the way that Agatha Christie made the Hercule Poirot books, which I think is really brilliant. But I also do think that this complements Knives Out really well, and that whereas Knives Out really took on the sort of old money wealth sort of lifestyle and that sort of thing, this one is much more focused on, even though they're obviously like, I know that they got their money through their father's like books and whatever, but this really takes on sort of influencer culture and new money and celebrity And the way that it comments on the pandemic is really smart, without it feeling like they played too much into it, without it ever feeling like a pandemic movie. I think that Daniel Craig is fantastic here. He and Janelle Monáe have fantastic chemistry together, much like he did with Ana de Armas in the first film. I just really loved everything about it. I want to get like 12 of these. And Rian Johnson has said he will keep doing them as long as Daniel Craig keeps returning his calls.
I think he will.
So I really think that this is a super smart thing sort of for Netflix to keep doing and to keep, bankrolling them. I would agree with you that this is probably their best shot at something, with the exception that I actually think their best shot at getting in at the Oscars is All Quiet on the Western Front. Yeah, but I really do think that, like, if this could get into screenplay, even picture, it would be so deserved.
Okay.
It would not be surprising.
No. Kevin, your thoughts on it real quick?
I am in the camp that thinks Glass Onion is better than Knives Out in every way, shape, or form.
Me too, Kevin. Me too.
That's three out of 4.
Which is like an impossible thing to comprehend, because I love Knives Out. And yet somehow Rian Johnson managed to take everything that works in Knives Out and make it so much more intense, so much more dangerous for all of the characters involved, and so much funnier and absurd. And yet it never falls apart. It's a film where the sets are bigger, the editing is even more extravagant, and yet like everything works about it. I think the way the film handles this cast, I think every member of this cast is more memorable than the cast in Knives Out. Again, Knives Out was a film that I loved, but somewhere in the second act of Knives Out, all the suspects are really just kind of hanging out in that house and not really doing anything. Whereas here, all the suspects have their possible motivation, and yet at the same time, all the suspects are in danger from each other. And so there's this real sense of not knowing what's going to happen next. There's this real sense of unpredictability, and anyone at any moment on this island could get hurt. And for that reason, like, I was at the edge of my seat. And so when the film became intense, I gasped. When the movie was funny, I just it just could not. You will not believe some of the cameos.
The cameos.
Listen, one of the cameos made me cry.
Yeah. Same. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Dan, obviously, Dan, you loved it too. Yeah.
I think it's the front runner for People's Choice, and because it is so.
Jumping on my topics today, huh, Dan? All right.
It is so freaking entertaining. I'm just giving you a nice seamless transition, Ryan.
Thank you.
It is so freaking entertaining. It is surprising constantly. I was shocked by how funny it was and how consistently funny it was. That's another thing. Like, Knives Out was funny, but this is like, he just dialed everything up. Rian Johnson. I love it. This is proof that you sometimes literally can throw money at a movie and it can come out, just on top. Because this really, this looks expensive. It looks like they
definitely was.
It looks like they spent money on it, and the most bang for your buck that you're going to get out of anything this year. It really is. Like, it took what they had from Knives Out, which was this sort of like all-star murder mystery ensemble, and they dialed it all the way up. Like, this is Ocean's 11 level, pure, slick Hollywood A-list entertainment. And
oh my God, that sounds so good.
It is like, it's like something like 5 minutes longer than Knives Out, and it feels that length, but it doesn't drop the momentum for a second. And it's so wonderfully twisty and clever and fun and fucking hilarious. I love this movie. Daniel Craig is perfect.
I think he's funnier here than in Knives Out.
Yeah, I totally agree. He has a monologue in the middle of the movie that at the premiere people were applauding. It's
The Daniel Craig monologue.
hysterical. It's even better than the damn donut hole.
Damn it! It's
in
even
Knives
better.
Out.
Oh no! I love that.
this movie.
I love that monologue. I think about that monologue all the time.
It's so good. I love this movie so much.
Dan compared this experience to Ocean's 11, one of my favorite movies of all time. And everyone knows, Kevin at least knows how much I love Rian Johnson and how much his films, you follow people's careers and you really see them evolve and get to be in a comfort level. It sounds like he's at an absolute comfort level here, following Star Wars. And now he gets to make his own franchise, his own thing. And Netflix, if Netflix wants to throw hundreds of $1 million at Rian Johnson, it seems like it's a pretty good idea rather than the Russo brothers. It's
unbelievable, Ryan, because it's like you're sitting in this theater, you're watching Glass Onion, and there's like a skeptical voice in your head constantly thinking, can Rian Johnson capture lightning in a bottle twice?
I think it'd be a fool not to think that after this, right?
It is one of those rare cases of a sequel where bigger is better.
Yes. Awesome. Well, I wanted to get to TIFF audience real quick, but I want to go back around and one last time to everyone and give them an opportunity to speak on a movie or two real quickly that they didn't get to talk about, and something that they love that they saw. Maybe it's one of the films that we already talked about. Maybe it's something that wasn't brought up. So, Erik, I'm going to start with you.
We didn't talk about the Banshees of Inisherin.
Oh no, we didn't.
It's
feckin' better.
It's feckin' great.
Yeah, it is feckin' great. As funny as Glass Onion and Bros is, I think this might be funnier. And I think more because the expectation of humor from those other two films was like there. It's already embedded. And the humor that was in Banshees on top of incredible pathos was, I can't say surprising because McDonough
has done it before.
Movies. But there was something different here. There was something different about this than his other films. It is not cynical. There is so much heart. Colin Farrell, oh my God. One of my absolute favorite performances.
Another one of those. Yeah. Another one.
When he's just like
great performance.
Whispering to his sister at the dinner table when there's nobody there. It's like, why are you whispering? But he is an absolute dream. And it is so funny and so sweet. Everybody's so good. Gleason is really good. Barry Cohen. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That kid breaks your fucking heart. Harry Condon, fantastic. There isn't
fantastic.
There
he
is
broke me into pieces.
Jenny the donkey.
I see the film in a week and I can't wait to see it. I love him going back to almost that In Bruges style, less harsh.
It's also gorgeous, phenomenal score.
Yeah,
everything about it.
Name of the game this year is phenomenal scores for movies. But Erik, real quick, I didn't get to ask you this earlier about Bros, and you went to the premiere and then you went to the after party. What did you think of Bros?
I love Bros. It does.
You wouldn't be saying it again if you didn't love it.
I know. Well, it does the thing again that we were just talking about, where it's a very specific sect of people and humor, but also has universal appeal, but it doesn't appease the universal side. There are very specific, gay jokes and culture jokes in this. It is not afraid to be scathing and catty and mean, just like we can be, but also to each other. There is a Renee Zellweger joke in this.
Oh my God.
But not a bad one about her. That is
it's so good.
Probably the funniest thing I saw all year so far.
Wow. Okay.
But it is also a movie with an enormous heart It's very, You Got Mail and all of the very traditional rom-coms from late 80s and early 90s, because, we didn't have those. So
We still don't have them, so it's
yeah,
nice to see
kind
them.
of-
Yeah.
When you're doing it now in 2022, you have to work your way backwards a little bit, because you do want your own version of things that you didn't have. And the way that it merges that style with 2022, I thought was wonderful. I love this movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nicole Ackman, any last film or something you want to talk about just real quick?
Yes, I have two films I want to touch on real quickly. One I referenced earlier, which is All Quiet on the Western Front, which was one of my most anticipated going into the festival. It is one of my favorite novels of all time, and I was very excited to see a German film made of it because it is a German novel. I am someone who I love World War I movies because unlike a lot of war movies, they are almost always anti-war films. And this definitely falls into that category. It definitely, does a lot of showing rather than telling how terrible war is and the way that it wreaks havoc on this generation of men. I think that it is, from a craft level, just absolutely astounding. It has one of my favorite scores of the year. The makeup work is insane. Costumes are great. Production design, insane. The editing, truly everything about it just absolutely blew me away. No pun intended. But I'm very excited for more people to see it. And I do think that is probably Netflix's best Oscar push. And I hope that they realize that and are willing to go for it. The other movie I have to mention, which I know has been at festivals before this, but I was very excited to see After Sun. If you loved Come On, Come On, I think you will love this movie. It has a very indie feel to it, but I think that works so well with the way that it sort of is about memory and about trying to parse out it really sort of deals with a young girl who's on vacation with her single father, and this idea that he is hiding so much of who he is from her and what he is going through. Paul Mescal is insanely incredible in it. Frankie, who plays young Sophie, is also fantastic, especially for a first-time actress. The bond that they have is fantastic. I love Charlotte Wells's direction of it. I love the way that it sort of plays with parent-child relationships, and especially because Paul's character Callum is such a young father, what that sort of does to their dynamic. It is one that I cannot wait to see again. I was absolutely floored by it. I laughed, I cried, I immediately wished I could turn around and watch it again, and I think it will probably remain one of my favorite movies of the whole year.
Yeah, if you want to talk about a movie with a nuanced conversation of depression, it's that movie.
It's that one.
Not The Sun.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah, it's one that I saw over at Telluride with Erik, and it's one that's been getting, the more and more I think about it, the more and more I love it. It is probably the debut of the year. Because it is a debut, right? There's not that many debuts this year.
And Emily, I think, are my two favorite debuts.
All right. Mr. Lee, any final films that you want to talk about real quick?
Yes, I want to add on to what Nicole said about All Quiet on the Western Front, a film that also absolutely floored me. It's like the urgency of 1917, but with the horror and bleakness of Come and See. Or frankly, it's like if Come and See had the Omaha beach sequence. It is a film that, I mean, I knew it was going to be this anti-war film. And like, if you've ever read the novel, if you've ever seen the previous two iterations of adapting this novel, like, it's like you're going into this film like knowing what you're going to get. But at the same time, I was really taken aback by just how expensive it all looked and how enormous of a production it was. There are sequences in this that are just, so disturbing and relentlessly overwhelming. I think of all the films I've seen this year, I think it has the best sound design, where every time an explosion goes off, it actually made me flinch. And Nicole commented on the score. I think the score accompanies the soundscape of this film so incredibly well. There's plenty of scenes where characters talk, but I think so much of the horror in the film comes from physical acting and just the facial expressions. I have to give a shout out to the lead actor, Felix Kammerer. Oh my gosh, there are moments in this film where he's giving that 1,000-yard stare that rivals the child from Come and See. And this film isn't afraid to be dirty, and like the lead actor, he has crusted mud on his face probably half the time of this movie. It is extremely uncomfortable and disturbing. And by the time the film was over, I couldn't really move. I felt like my whole body was numb from the experience, which means it did an incredible job. And yet today, I saw it yesterday, and today, if you ask me right now, would I see it again? I would actually watch it again right now.
Okay.
Same.
It seems to be
incredible film. And then really, really quickly, the other film I want to give a shout out to is Decision to Leave, which is Park Chan-wook's newest film. And the reason why I want to give a shout out to Decision to Leave is because it feels very different from Park Chan-wook's other films. It is much less violent. It is much less explicit. It is essentially him telling a romance story out of a murder mystery premise. It's like the best way Erik and I talked about this. We were saying how the film is essentially like if Park Chan-wook did Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest.
It's so North by Northwest.
Oh my God.
It is so romantic. It is unpredictable. I think the two lead performances in this are just, oh gosh, they have so much, there's so much energy between the two of them. And it's all in their faces. It's all in the things that these two characters want to say to each other, but they can't. I think it's a film that you absolutely should not miss. It's going to be playing at the New York Film Festival, and I plan on seeing it again there.
I see it next week at the U.S. premiere here in Austin, Texas, at Fantastic Fest. It's my number one most anticipated film left this year.
Oh my gosh!
I swear to God, it better be as good as everybody else is saying it is, because I've been waiting for this movie for a long damn time.
It's a film that only gets better the more you think about it. And it's funny, like earlier in this episode, we were talking about how one of the pleasures of going to a film festival is you get to talk about the film immediately with someone afterwards, right? So Erik and I saw the film together, and when the film was over, we were talking about it. We were talking about how much we liked it, and then we had some reservations about it. But then the days go by, like the second day, the third day, the fourth day, Erik and I sort of came back together again and talked about it again. And it's incredible how just a few days later, he and I both loved the film even more.
Yeah.
And even when you're seeing a whole lot of movies, sometimes things can get kind of lost in the fray, but it never left. And it just kind of kept building and growing in both of our esteem. And when you are talking about it one-on-one with somebody face-to-face, it's just different. It hits different.
Yeah.
All Quiet on the Western Front, Decision to Leave, two big films this year that I think will be fighting each other for that, the International Feature Oscar and maybe even directing, maybe the surprise directing nomination from.
I also think both international films that have good shots in categories outside of just international feature.
Yes, for sure.
It does feel like that category could potentially actually be competitive this year instead of knowing 6 months in advance who's going to win.
Yeah, because there's I know all the stuff about it and whatnot, but there is still Bardo sitting out there too, and they love Iñárritu, so don't discount it. But Dan, I know you wanted to talk about one international film in particular, maybe something else too, but it is a film that I've seen. I loved it as well, and so I think I know what you're going to say.
Very, very quick shout out to Broker, which
so
absolutely destroyed me on the first day of the festival. I really want to know what the deal is with this movie's eligibility in terms of what country, because
It's BS, right?
if it's decision to leave, fine, okay, but like if this really was a potential choice for Japan, I saw Plan 75 too, and that's good, but it's got nothing on this.
This movie's so good.
God, the way that Corey Ada is able to give so much to all of these characters in this movie, that like how long is it? It's under 2 hours.
It's it's like an hour,
just over 2 hours,
or maybe a little bit.
Like just over 2 hours, and like and every character gets a really admirable, like complex backstory, and you feel for them in all these different ways. And I love him. I love Shoplifters. I think this is even better. All the way through, I was just so into this story and these characters. Absolutely loved that movie. But my big takeaway from this festival, and the review just went up yesterday on AwardsWatch, is Pearl, the Ty West X
Mia
prequel.
Goth. I saw that too. Yeah.
Mia Goth, just the performance of the year. No one in anything is topping what she is doing in this movie. She is like full board, like 120% committed.
Minute monologue.
The monologue that monologue is insane, and she co-wrote it, so like even more. But like that monologue, which she's doing, is out of this world. And then the last shot of this movie is just a close up on her face that is like a natural freeze frame, and she holds it for like
the whole
half of the end credits, and just what she goes through, all the emotions on her face. No one period is touching that this year. It is the acting achievement of the year, and it will not get anywhere near the respect it deserves, because it's in this campy, weird, perverted horror movie, and she deserves everything.
Yeah,
she deserves everything. The movie is so twisted. It's just as good as X was, and it is now in theaters. Everyone, please go see it. You will have a rollicking fun time. It is so great.
And it won't be the last time we see Ty West and Mia Goth working together. They are completing the trilogy.
Oh my God.
A trilogy we had no idea was going to be coming at all. And now we get Maxine probably next year or the year after, or something like that.
The response in that theater at Midnight Madness when we flashed to that little teaser for Maxine, I have never heard anything like it. It was insane. Great.
Speaking of the audience and their reactions, it's the final thing that we're going to do today. In this, we're going to say what we think are going to win the audience award. I think Dan sort of tipped his hat a little bit to Glass Onion. But I'm curious what everybody else thinks. Erik, I'll start with you. And I put you on the spot, Erik, because by the time this episode comes out, we'll know, and we'll see how right or wrong we are. See, we'll put our money where our mouth is. But what do you think's winning the TIFF Audience Award? And propelling itself big time into the awards campaign, usually with the win in this category. Yeah.
And they do a top three, and it's a ranked top three. And sometimes there are some very surprising choices. 2018 didn't have A Star Is Born, and everybody thought, the Little Monsters were just going to
last year. Power of the Dog got in.
But then also last year, Scarborough. The year before that, Bean. You have movies that are absolutely on nobody's radar for this, but they sneak their way in there. And so I was trying to kind of find something that might be able to do that, like I Like Movies or something like that.
Aristotle and Dante.
Yeah, even maybe the single screening of The People's Joker
Oh yeah.
in the cold.
That.
I could see some people doing some numbers
Yeah.
with that, but generally your top three are they're
Big
known
films.
films.
Yeah, they're known problems.
And we also know that it's only been one time since 2008 that the winner hasn't been Best Picture nominated. So if you're going to pick the winner here, it better be in your Best Picture top 10 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the Fabelmans, Glass Onion are total front runners, but I'm also looking to like Banshees and even The Whale.
I think The
The
Whale.
The
yeah.
response to the public premium screening of The Whale was unlike any I've ever had here.
Mm.
And I think it could be like Room.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say The Whale.
Wow. Okay.
That would not surprise me, Eric, because the emotional response that people are having to that movie, and like not just because I did, but like
Oh, I couldn't
everybody,
stop crying.
so many people. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't have The Whale in my top 3, but yeah, I think that's a really good pick too. And it also the Brendan Fraser of it all. He got the tribute actor award there too.
Mhm.
You know, it's awarding not just that film, but it's awarding him for sure. If you're voting for that, and it is also a movie like you guys have all said that gets you emotionally. And right when you're voting for that, it could really tug at the heartstrings. Nicole, what do you think is going to win?
I really have been throwing several things around. Glass Onion definitely is in my top 3. The Fabelmans, although I will say I felt like there weren't many screenings of the Fabelmans, and I wonder if that could hurt it. I also definitely am considering The Whale. I wonder honestly if like the third spot could go to, and this is like totally out of left field, but everyone I know who saw All Quiet on the Western Front raved about it. So I think it is going to get votes from people.
Yep.
But yeah, I think The People's Joker is honestly also like a really good one, especially just like if it hadn't been the fact that now we know it's not coming out.
Mhm.
But yeah, I also could see The Woman King getting in the top 3 because again, it's one that I sort of heard universal raves over. People, even if they didn't like love it, liked it. So
It's
I'm
an A+ cinema score.
exactly,
Yeah, that's
and it's
insane.
also a very like rousing movie.
Yeah.
And I think one that people can. I also like, not to be cynical, but I think it is one too that people can kind of like give themselves a little pat on their back for voting for. And that influences things sometimes. So I think somewhere in there, but I really do think actually like Glass Onion stands a good shot at it.
Yeah, Kevin.
I have the Fabelmans at number 1, and for number 2, I actually have Women Talking, because I think that film is just so important that I think it's very easy for voters to rally behind that because of the importance of the film. As for third place, like I agree with pretty much what everyone has already said, that the third place could be anything. It could be The Whale, it could be The Woman King, it could be Glass Onion. I'd be happy if a movie like Glass Onion surprises, but I'm just not sure if Glass Onion is regarded as like would be given the most prestigious spot, despite it being easily one of the most entertaining films playing at the fest. I wonder if audiences would distinguish that and say like, yes, Glass Onion is probably my favorite, but is it going to be the one that I vote for? Probably not. And that's why I don't have Glass Onion in my top 3 spot. I lean closer to Fabelmans, Women Talking, The Whale, and even Banshees before I consider Glass Onion.
Well, also too, every single winner since 2008 has won at least one Oscar.
Yeah.
4 of them have won Best Picture. So if I'm picking The Whale, it's because I think
Brendan Fraser.
that Fraser's winning. If I'm picking Women Talking, I'm looking at adapted screenplay, picture. If I'm picking the Fabelmans, picture, director, screenplay, and you kind of just start building from there.
Yeah. Dan, you said you had Glass Onion up at the top, correct? So what rounds out your other 2 spots?
Yeah, I think it's definitely The Whale. And for that third spot, I kind of go back and forth a lot, but judging by what TIFF audiences have gone for recently, I'm thinking it may be something like the Banshees of Inisherin. Because people really loved that, but it sort of has that. It's a comedy. It's very funny, but it kind of has that prestige-y feel to it that makes it a little like deeper than something like Glass Onion or Bros, which I also think Bros could do it too. But I'd say Glass Onion and The Whale duking it out for the top spot, and then Banshees.
Okay, so I get to play my predictions, and I've seen and not been in any of these crowds or experienced that. All I experience is stuff online. So here's what I think. All right, you ready? I'm going to go with the Fabelmans up at the top. I just think that kind of that makes sense. It's safe. It's good. Okay. I do agree on All Quiet on the Western Front. Everyone that has seen that movie is like, this is fantastic. It's better than any of the other ones. And it's blown their minds. And it's a complete surprise as well, too, how much people have loved it. And I think if enough people have seen it, it'll be in the two. But here's my curveball. As much as I love Glass Onion, I do kind of agree with Kevin. Like maybe some people will be like, oh, but it's not as good as the first one, or do I want to put it in my spot or whatever? But here's a movie I think that if people saw it and people loved it, and it went crazy with its reactions, people were like, to the point in which like everybody at this site barely could get into it. Whoever didn't get into it. And my number 3 spot, I think, is going to be Weird.
Yeah.
I think the Weird Al film could break into the top 3 because
That's a good pick. That's a good pick. Yeah.
That's like the film that like everybody wanted to talk about. Everybody was surprised by it. It's a fun film. Love Daniel Radcliffe, so it's kind of that sort of celebrity. You have Weird Al too. I'm not saying it's getting nominated for Best Picture or anything. I'm just like, it's the entertaining film that gets in there.
The midnight screening of it was insane.
Yeah. So I think that you got to keep an eye out for that for sure. So, okay. That is it for this episode. We've talked a lot. We've done a lot of movies, talked a lot of movies. We'll be talking about these movies throughout the rest of the year, all these various film festivals, NYFF's next, and then the smaller film festivals from there throughout the rest of the year. Erik Anderson, can you tell everybody out there where they can find you and all your amazing work on the internet?
Well, obviously awardswatch.com, and then on Twitter at awards_watch.
Nicole Ackman.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, all of that at Nicole Ackman 16. I have TIFF reviews coming for Awards Watch, for Next Best Picture, for Music City Drive-In, and also for Oscar Central, which does have reviews now. So get super excited for that. And you can find me all those places.
Kevin Lee.
You can find all of my amazing work on Film Inquiry, That Shelf, and Awards Watch. I'm on Twitter at KLEE_film review.
Dan Bayer.
You can find me on Twitter at DanceandDan on Film.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. You can find my work here at Awards Watch, In Session Film, The Playlist, Film Speak, all these other places. Next week, I might not be here. Erik might be running the ship because I'll be at Fantastic Fest. So Erik's in charge. He'll come up with something fun for everyone to do. And then when I do, if I'm not here next, no, Erik's saying no, he's not, nothing fun. So no just fun, work. Just work. Everybody's just going to be working. It's just going to be hands on a keyboard for an hour and a half of this podcast. But no, when I do get back, we're going to play games. We haven't played games in a while. And I've got some new games that I want to play and torture all these wonderful guests with. So until then, we'll see you all next time.